All right, Disney CEO Bob Chapek is patting himself on the back these days. He bragged in an interview that his company stood their ground when the state of Florida passed the Parental Rights and Education Act. Now, this bill, quite frankly, was a common sense educational reform measure designed to protect children from being indoctrinated with sexual material, protecting children under the grade of 4. Well, Disney's leadership initially tried to avoid the debate, but an activist subsection of its workforce eventually pushed them into the arena, and Disney opposed the law. Well, in response, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill ending Disney's self-governing autonomous status in the Sunshine State. So how are they claiming victory? I'm not sure. Joining me now to discuss this is Florida State Representative Randy Fine. He was the author of HB 3C, the Independent Special Districts Bill, which revoked Disney's special status in the law. Representative Fine, welcome to Washington Watch.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you were on the program last spring after first proposing the bill to strip Disney of this special status. What has happened since then?
Well, we stripped it, and I think there are discussions about how we want to handle things moving forward. Do we want to reconstitute a new special district with different rights and privileges, or do we just want things to revert as they do in the law? But I will say this, I don't know how Disney could claim victory. They didn't get a vote in whether we passed the bill, and frankly, we passed it irrespective of what they think about it.
Well, I would also say when you look at their standing among American citizens, they dropped significantly. I think they were like number 26 in terms of most favored companies in America. They dropped down to 66. Their numbers in terms of those attending their theme parks as well as their revenue numbers are dropping. So I'm not sure how you claim victory there. But also, I want to ask you this question because from my vantage point, it looks like other corporations may have taken notes based on what happened to Disney.
Well, I will say this. It's our view that corporations, whether they're conservative or liberal, should be focused on delivering shareholder value, build products and services that customers want, leave the politics to the politicians. And I think companies are realizing that when they do this, they lose. To be perfectly frank, I think Disney did what they did because typically conservatives are polite. We're nice. So when the woke mob yells and screams, these executives just take the path of least resistance. Well, what we've shown in Florida is if you give into the woke mob, there may be consequences. And I think as a result, hopefully more companies are just going to go straight down the middle and leave the politics to the public and the politicians.
Well, I certainly hope you are right, but evidence would suggest that maybe you, in fact, are. This past weekend, Governor DeSantis again talking about corporations and how they're wanting special status and how wokeness has taken over those corporations. And we have no obligation to yield to that. So is Florida providing a new model to policymakers when it comes to these woke corporations?
Well, I think we are. And I think what we're saying is we are willing to use our influence and our ability to demand that companies do the right thing. And we're seeing it doesn't happen, whether it's ESG or some of these shareholder rules. If companies want to act goofy, they're going to have problems here in the state of Florida.
Let's go for just a moment before we run out of time to the underlying issue. And it was very common sense piece of legislation driven, and I've talked to many people involved, driven by constituent concerns, parents, the Parental Rights and Education Act. How's that going in the state of Florida now that it's been put in place?
It's going great, but it's not without fights. What's interesting is our woke school districts have made it incredibly onerous to implement the bill. So they're requiring school districts to do things that we never asked them to do under the bill. And then they blame us for doing it, which is why it's important that whether it's Governor DeSantis winning his election or me winning mine or school board races, we need people from top to bottom committed to parental rights because they're fighting back as hard as they can.
Well, it's making a difference because I do think more parents now feel emboldened to engage at the local school board level. So is it the intention to follow up to make sure that these school boards and these schools actually do abide by the law?
Yeah, and the good news is we gave parents the right to sue if they don't. So parents can police it. It's not just the state. It's not just the division, the Department of Education. It's not just the legislature. Every parent now is emboldened to do that. And as we've flipped school boards from woke left regimes to parents first conservatives, we're going to see a lot of that happen.
Well, Randy Fine, I want to thank you for joining us, and I'm excited to see what Florida is doing on many fronts and grateful for your leadership, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.